How did you hear about the scheme?
Well, I actually heard about it through a friend who mentioned it to me, and in talking about septic tanks, my interest was immediately aroused because ours was 54 years old. This is in a 250-year-old cottage, and I know it had been struggling a little bit over the years, so the thought of having to replace it had been in my mind anyway. So yeah, I was very interested.
Did you have any initial doubts about the scheme, and if so, what were they?
The doubts are you'd immediately think, well, you don't get something for nothing, this must be some sort of scam. So to counter that, I tend to ask a lot of questions, which I did. And all the questions came back making a lot of sense. I was referred to a website, and the website also had, again, answered a lot of the thoughts and concerns in my mind. And as the process went on, including visiting Harrison Civil's Norfolk Rivers, it was all so professionally put. And I actually did used to be in the insurance industry as a settling insurance claims, so I'm a bit dubious about things. And so I checked everything, and it all stacked up.
Did they ask you to do anything to help with the scheme initially?
Yeah, in the end, there was it was suggested that because we are in quite a rural area, if I could get a few other neighbours interested in the scheme as well, then it could potentially make ours a viable sell to work on. So yeah, I have an email sort of circulation within our little hamlet of 30 houses, and a combination of that and face-to-face and a bit of putting stuff through letterboxes, I actually did drum up quite a lot of interest.
How many roughly do you know?
I believe that I say 30, I think 16 or 17, I think actually did apply via the Harrison Civil Norfolk Rivers website, and as far as I'm aware, a lot of those went through.
Fast forwarding to the installation side, what was that process like for you on the day?
To be fair, the easiest word to use is professional. They did really come across, they've been doing it for a long time, a lot of years, a very experienced team. And I felt quite reassured that they knew exactly sort of what they're doing, all the pieces of kit turned up as was expected, a digger and a dumper and this sort of thing. And yeah, they just got stuck in, and I could see it all gradually taking shape.
How long did it take to do the job?
Started on the Monday, finished on the Thursday lunchtime, which I think is a little bit longer than some, probably because I said we're in a rural area. We actually have a very narrow lane which accesses the rear of our property, which is the only way to get to where the tank had to be placed, and access was a little bit awkward. So I think that made it a bit more difficult, like for getting topsoil, certainly gravel, cement, that sort of thing around the back there.
Were there any challenges with the installation?
Yeah, they did well. I say they were good. It was nice as well that we had the same people in the team all the way through. So it got a relationship with them, if you like. So that worked nicely.
Was there anything that you weren't quite happy with?
I'm a great believer that you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. Now, there was a little bit of a broken egg in that, not in the installation as such, but I did say that there was access to the rear of our property was down a lane, and then you have to drive down our garden, which slopes in the opposite direction to where the actual tank is going to be going. So that as you drive down there, it did get quite chewed up, to be fair. Now, I know that Harrison's carefully lay down track mats, I think they call them, which cuts down the rutting, etc. But because it was particularly busy that week, they were short on those mats. So it did get quite rutted, to be perfectly fair at the back. But I don't want to get it out of perspective, because they simply ordered some topsoil and then just leveled the ruts off, etc., and it was left totally flat.
Overall, were you happy with your installation?
I was quite happy. To be honest, I just, the topsoil that laid it, I just chucked down a bit of seed, and it is now sitting there waiting to come up. So it's quite recent.
Talking now about the environmental side of things, how do you feel now about your involvement in the scheme?
To be fair, the environmental side probably was secondary for me, because there was an issue that with the old septic tank, my property wasn't compliant, so that it actually would not have been mortgageable if and when we eventually come to sell it. So that was a primary thing. But since we front onto a very nice common, I had always been aware that the discharge from our old septic tank was onto a very nice bit of common. Whereas now, it makes me feel a little bit better that it's a nice clean discharge by comparison with what it was before.
What would you say to other homeowners who may be on the fence about upgrading their septic tank to a sewage treatment plant?
The same thing I said to my neighbours, because certainly the initial thing is scepticism, that this is some sort of scam, etc., etc. And I've been through the entire process, and it is not. It's perfectly genuine, it's straightforward. I have now got a state-of-the-art plant, whereas previously I had cut a 54-year-old that piece of sewage, and keep an open mind. That's a key thing that I would say, because there are now, not everybody in our hamlet went for it, and I believe that quite a few of those now have seen their neighbours getting these tanks and being brought totally up to date, and they're going, perhaps we should have considered that after all. So, yeah, keep an open mind is what I'd say to them.
Can you tell us a little bit about the sign-up process for the scheme? Did you find it complicated? Did it take a lot of time?
No, not at all. No, it's all pretty straightforward, although admittedly I'm reasonably comfortable with paperwork. But from the forms were there, they're sent through. It was a case of looking through them at my leisure. And then we did come into Harrison Civils, Norfolk Rivers, to actually sign the documents. But I'd had them for several days beforehand to sort of look through, and there wasn't a single issue. They'd all been personalised to our particular property, and everything just stacked up, no problem at all. Signed them here, they were sent off. I had a mortgage company involved, so copy went to them, and yeah, fine.
Now, I know many people don't like filling out forms online, but how did you find that part of the process? Because you obviously had to register your details. So just tell us a little bit about your online experience with Harrison Civils, Norfolk Rivers.
Well, certainly there was absolutely no issue from my point of view. I'm reasonably computer literate, but it's more interesting to be able to say that with the neighbours that I encouraged subsequently, some of them do struggle a bit more, but as far as I'm aware, everybody successfully registered. It is very simple. That's what I did find. There's very little you have to put in, very, very basic information, and Harrison Civils, Norfolk Rivers get back to you as needed, and then the process begins. But no, actually, the initial using our website, very easy.
I'm aware that you voluntarily did some promotional work, acting as an ambassador, as it were, for your village, in that you went to your neighbours and shared with them the information about the septic tank upgrade scheme. How did you get on with that experience?
Well, it's relatively simple, since I must admit I tend to know the people locally anyway. But it was where it was interesting to me, because the more I spoke to, I got a broader view of how the initiative was being considered. And it varied from, I'm not interested in that, no, I can't have something for nothing, through to, really, tell me more. And I think it was a really tell me more where they got the open minds and they actually went for it.
And did that benefit the village?
So yes, it certainly would. It's meant that my immediate neighbours have actually now got state-of-the-art graph tanks that are working. So unless I had taken on that role of ambassador, as you were calling it, then yeah, I guess we would still be as we were. But instead now the environment's benefited, and my neighbours have actually got a more mortgageable, if they need it, property as well.